In 1916, the Battle of the Somme took place, a battle in which 5,102 Ulstermen of the 36th Ulster Division died or were wounded, proving their loyalty to king and empire. A loyalty that was rewarded with the conferring of no fewer than 4 Victoria Crosses to men of the division. This is the story of one of them, Eric Norman Frankland Bell. The men of the Ulster Division, the flower of their generation, fought with a common bond unequalled in the history of warfare, a common bond of religion, politics and outlook. Many soldiers were members of the Ulster Volunteer Force, the citizens' army raised by Edward Carson to oppose Home Rule. Many were also Orange men, united in a fraternal brotherhood and about to go into battle with sashes and orange warrants tucked into their kit bags. The date of the battle was, after all, the original date of the Battle of the Boyne. A few were Roman Catholics sharing different views back home, but on the battlefield ready to fight alongside their colleagues. Others had no political outlook at all. They were in France, simply to do their bit against the Hun and get home again to see their families. Regretfully, few were ever to see their loved ones again. The Great Allied Offensive of the 1st of July 1916, forever known to history as the Battle of the Somme, had been months in the planning and had been preceded by a week-long artillery barrage of unprecedented proportions. However, as news reached the generals safe in their underground dugouts miles behind the front lines, it had become clear that a monumental disaster was taking place. On the first day of the offensive alone, British casualties amounted to 60,000 men killed, wounded, or missing in action. Those in the 36th Ulster Division, the only unit to reach their objectives, were a staggering 5,100. It was simply without doubt the blackest day in the history of the British Army, and indeed of this province. It seemed that every street in every city, town and village in the north had lost a father, son, husband or brother in the terrible carnage. By the time the offensive had run its course in November, British losses had reached a catastrophic 420,000, the French lost 195,000, whilst the German losses came to a shocking 650,000. The bravery and courage shown by the British troops, and in particular by the Ulster Volunteers as they advanced towards the German lines on that fateful day, was unsurpassed. They were truly lions led by donkeys. This devotion to duty led to the award of many decorations to the men of the 36th Ulster Division, including no fewer than 4 Victoria Crosses. 3 of the medals were awarded posthumously. Eric Norman Frankland Bell was studying architecture at Liverpool University under the tutelage of Professor Sir Charles Riley when the German army marched unprovoked into Belgium. The young student, who had a keen ear for music, was also an accomplished artist and linguist. When the call came to fight for king and country, Bell decided to give up his studies to enlist in the Royal Inniskilling Fusiliers, which he did on the 22nd of September 1914. On gaining his commission, the young officer was posted to the 6th Battalion, Royal Inniskilling Fusiliers, as a second lieutenant. This undoubtedly pleased his father, who many years previously had been a quartermaster at the Royal Inniskilling Fusiliers Depot in Omagh and later at Newtownards, and who had also seen service in Burma at the turn of the century. Born at Alma Terrace, Enniskillen, on the 28th of August, 1895, Eric Norman Frankland Bell was the youngest of 3 children, all boys, of Captain Edward Henry Bell and Dora Algeo Bell. His early schooling took place at the People's College in Warrington, where his father had been stationed on his return from Burma, but he later transferred to St Margaret's School in Toxteth, Liverpool. Lieutenant Bell was never totally happy with his posting in the 6th Battalion, as he above all wanted to be among the Ulster Volunteers of the 36th Ulster Division. He was granted permission to transfer and he joined the 9th Battalion, Royal Inniskilling Fusiliers, our County Tyrone Volunteers, which was commanded by Lieutenant Colonel St Q Ricardo, a leading figure in the Ulster Volunteer movement. Bell's father was adjutant and later served in Egypt, and his 2 brothers, Haldane Frankland and Alan George Frankland, also joined the battalion after returning from Australia and the United States on the outbreak of war. Haldane Frankland Bell was later seriously wounded in action in the heavy fighting on the Western Front in July 1916. On arriving in France, the young subaltern was put in command of a trench mortar battery in May 1916, and shortly afterwards was promoted to the rank of temporary captain. During the attack of the 9th Battalion, Royal Inniskilling Fusiliers, Bell accompanied the frontline troops as they advanced towards the German lines. At one stage, the attack faltered as it was caught in enfilading fire from a well-placed enemy machine gun nest. However, Captain Bell crept forward and single-handedly dealt with the emplacement. On 3 further occasions, Bell went forward and threw trench mortar bombs amongst the enemy positions again when the attack, led by advanced bombing parties, was halted. When his supply of bombs ran out, he continued to press home the attack by firing his rifle at the Germans, who were beginning to regroup for a counterattack. All the time, Bell came under heavy fire from the enemy, but this did not deter the young officer from doing his duty. He even stood on a parapet near one of the enemy trenches to get a better shot. However, his good fortune could not last indefinitely, and as he was rallying some troops who had lost their officers, he fell mortally wounded. The award of the Victoria Cross to Eric Norman Frankland Bell was gazetted on 26 September 1916 and ended with the words, "He gave his life in his supreme devotion to duty." Lieutenant Bell's body, like so many others, was never recovered from the battlefield, and as a consequence his name appears on the Thiepval Memorial. This impressive multi-arched memorial, designed by Edward Lutyens and opened in 1932, records the names of the 73,357 British and Commonwealth soldiers listed as missing on the Somme. Besides recording the name of Eric Norman Frankland Bell VC, the memorial features the names of 6 other recipients of the Victoria Cross who have no known grave. In July 2016, the Ulster History Circle unveiled a blue plaque to Captain Eric Norman Frankland Bell at Alma Terrace, Irvingstown Road, Enniskillen. The citation reads, "For most conspicuous bravery, he was in command of a trench mortar battery and advanced with the infantry in the attack. When our front line was hung up by enfilading machine gun fire, Captain Bell crept forward and shot the machine gunner. Later, on no less than 3 occasions when our bombing parties, which were clearing the enemy's trenches, were unable to advance, he went forward alone and threw trench mortar bombs among the enemy. When he had no more bombs available, he stood on the parapet under intense fire and used a rifle with great coolness and effect on the enemy advancing to counterattack. Finally, he was killed rallying and reorganizing infantry parties which had lost their officers. All this was outside the scope of his normal duties. With his battery, he gave his life in his supreme devotion to duty." The Ulster History Circle's chairman, Chris Spur, said they were delighted to honour this hero of the Somme with a blue plaque placed on his birthplace in Enniskillen. The plaque was unveiled by Ulster Unionist MP Tom Elliott. Thanks for watching. Please like and hit that subscribe button to ensure you enjoy future videos from the British Unionist Society. So until next time, take care.